It's time for The Drive with Q on Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game. Now, here's Q.
Good afternoon, everyone. 4 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. It is indeed a Man Up Monday, a Man Up Manolo Monday edition of The Drive with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. 2 hours to play with. We will take up to 6 o'clock straight up. Coming at you live inside the friendly confines of the Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game studio, Southwest Florida's newest game in town. I hope everyone had a good sports weekend and you are enjoying your Monday. A lot to get into on what has turned out to be a very busy 20th of January 2025. Don't forget the 727-858-6650. That'll get you involved in two-way sports talk. As I mentioned, busy day. I mean, think about this for a moment. Think about everything that's gone on over the last 24 to 48 hours. It's just been a whirlwind, has it not? And this is why we have to man up on this Monday, because there's a lot that we have to dissect. There is a lot that we have to get into. And I can tell you this right now. Not only do we get the opportunity today to celebrate the great Martin Luther King, MLK Day, we also usher in a new era, obviously, with Trump. Second inaugural dress. Maybe you guys saw the festivities earlier today. And then from my standpoint, what I believe is a horrible, horrible, horrible day for me. And that is because not only did I have to watch what happened over the weekend in the NFL, not only did I have to endure the NFL playoffs, why my Giants are sitting back. Not like the late, great Bob Uecker must be in the front row. No. They're in the parking lot off of 16W. Watching the upstart Washington Commanders, my Washington Commanders, not only waltz into Detroit, and we called it on Friday's show, they absolutely destroyed the Detroit Lions 45-31 behind the brilliant play of not only a great defense, a riverboat gambler and a head coach in Dan Quinn, and the rising superstar in their quarterback rookie, Jaden Daniels. Washington moves on to the NFC title game. Then on Sunday in the snow, I had to sit and I had to watch the Rams just implode. I had to watch the Rams tease me. I fought like hell with the Los Angeles Rams. There was absolutely no way I was going to be able to stomach watching the Philadelphia Eagles win that game yesterday. Knowing my disdain, knowing my hatred for the Philadelphia Eagles. You guys know it. It's well documented, as we like to say. And man, what did I watch yesterday? What the hell did I watch yesterday? I watched Saquon Barkley, which is, again, I'm over it. But I had to watch Saquon Barkley run with the brilliance that has pretty much made him right now the best back in all of football for over 200 yards in the friggin' snow. I had to watch the defense of the Philadelphia Eagles come up big late. I had to watch Sirianni parade up and down the sidelines. And once again, the Philadelphia Eagles are headed back to the NFC Championship by virtue of their 28-22 win over the, I'll say, give them a lot of credit, a lot of heart, Rams. So you got those two teams, mind you. Oh, by the way, NFC East divisional teams. Now, the Commanders are not really the rival of the Giants. If you know anything, it's the Eagles. You know, even back in the day in the 80s, Washington, when they were then the Redskins and the Giants, played some great, fascinating games. NFC Championship in 86. Okay, fine. It's a different era. So to go down the turnpike or up the turnpike and you have to deal with the Philadelphia Eagles, that just added insult to injury, knowing that Jaden Daniels is going to be around for 10 years. Saquon's not going anywhere. And Howie and the Eagles always figure out a way to be competitive, which just absolutely just sickened me. I just can't, for the life of me, For the life of me, I had to watch that nonsense. Then, so now you got the NFC decided. You got the NFC decided. Then on Saturday, once again, the referees decide to bail out the Kansas City Chiefs. And look, we pretty much thought the Chiefs were going to win this game handily. They beat the Texans 23-14. Everything we told you that couldn't go wrong for the Texans with special teams actually transpired. So the Chiefs now go back to the AFC Championship. They have an opportunity to get back to the Super Bowl, back to back and win it. Historic. We'll talk about the relevance, everything. And then last night, you have the Bills and the Ravens, and we told you we liked Buffalo, but the gut said, man, we don't want to stop Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter, who, oh, by the way, only got 16 touches in the game. The Ravens with an opportunity to win late, and you had to just horrible drop by Mark Andrews for that 2-point conversion. And the Bills now march on to the AFC Championship after that 27-25 win. So, as we like to say, and then there were 4. Washington and the Eagles, and Buffalo and Kansas City, and it just rubs me the wrong way. Again, having to watch, once again, the Philadelphia Eagles march through the playoffs, watching Saquon Barkley running roughshod, the offensive line. And Jalen Hurts is banged up. We know he's that was affecting him. There was a lot of storylines this weekend, and I want to get into it as well. 727-858-6650, because you can go anywhere with this. You can go with Hurts and being banged up going in the NFC Championship game, where we knew the Eagles were going to be favored, obviously, in this game. I said last night that I thought the line was going to open up, I would say about 5 or so. 5, 6. I mean, are we really? We'll wait to see what Hurts he should be go. And then you got Kansas City at home. They're going to lay 2-3. It's sitting at 2. Okay, early line's fine. We'll get into all that. Washington and the Eagles, 3 o'clock on Fox, 6:30 CBS, obviously, Nance and Romo, Bills and Chiefs. You can get in the officiating during the Kansas City game, which has now become a joke. You can get into the Detroit Lions, who, oh, by the way, just lost Ben Johnson. Multiple reports saying Ben Johnson will be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. So this is what happens when you're successful. Detroit Lions offensive coordinator gone. Now looks like by all accounts he'll sign an Olympia deal to be the Chicago Bears' next head coach. If you are Bears fan, you're probably ecstatic. You are probably ecstatic. So we can get into that as well. And then you had Washington, the upstart Washington Commanders. And I'll tell you, man, this is why when you're playing with house money and you've got a star in Jaden Daniels, you always have a shot. I mean, they did not just beat Detroit. They dominated them, man. And the thing is, we're gonna talk about the coaching over the weekend, because remember on Friday's show, what did I say? What did I say when you think about this? Do your job. Do your job. That's all you need to do. And this weekend, some guys did and some guys did it. 727-858-6650. We'll get to comments early today. Lloyd Vance will join us bottom of the hour. Trevor chimes in, starts us off on a Man Up Manolo Monday. Barkley may have ran past Jackson in the MVP race. The voting's already decided during the regular season. Just knock it off. Stop it. Rick Q, welcome to become the Eagles fan. Replays on NFL Network now. I would rather just poke my eyes out, but I appreciate that, Rick. I really do. He goes on to say, don't blame the Eagles, Giants management blew it. Hey, listen, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm sick and tired. I don't need to see the friggin' Philadelphia Eagles on my screen anymore. I don't need to see Sirianni, Big Dom. I don't need to see numbers 26 running in the snow, running for 200. I mean, that was all you have to do. What did I say on Friday's show? Just feed them. Just feed them. Just give the ball to Barkley and everyone get the hell out of the way. And the funny thing is, some of these quarterbacks this weekend, we'll start with the coaching. That's number one. And then we'll get in to some of the players. Because I thought Dan Campbell, McVay, and oh, by the way, Harbaugh had a horrible weekend. I thought Dan Campbell panicked in that game against Washington. I really do. I believe there were some play calls. And look, You can sit there and talk about the interception, the pick six, Jared Goff getting belted. I mean, it's amazing. You blow on Patrick Mahomes, you get 15 yards. Jared Goff gets decapitated, and no one's throwing a flag. Now, I can say this. Dan Campbell came out and said, hey, you know what? If we had our B game, we're going to be. You can't act like that. You can't, because you did not coach these guys up. Now, whether the Commanders perceive that as a slight, it doesn't matter. No one's caring about the 2025 regular season. Washington's going on. Detroit's not. I mean, that was a poorly coached game. Ben Johnson did not have his best moment, and Aaron Glenn did not have his best moment. How do you allow 45 points at home in a divisional round against a team that you should have beat, against a rookie quarterback on the road? That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Listen, Jared Goff did not play well. He had his moments in that game, and I clearly believe he was affected by that hit. But what did Washington do? They ran the football, and Detroit ran it well, but they ran the football. Daniels was efficient, and oh, by the way, they kept him upright. When you play mistake-free football, you're going to win. The Lions did not play mistake-free football. Jared Goff had 3 picks, had to pick 6. Team was fumbling left and right, lost a fumble. So Dan Campbell didn't have his best moment. Either did Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson. I'll get into McVay in a moment, but I want to get into Harbaugh. I have to get into Harbaugh because as much as I kill these other coaches, and if you've listened to me long enough, you know, my knock, if you will, on Mike Tomlin per se. What have you done for me lately? Sorry, Steelers fans, I'm not trying to ruffle your feathers, but I have to be fair. The Baltimore Ravens and Harbaugh, he's got to take a hit here. And it's not about Jackson. You know, everyone's going to talk about Lamar Jackson with a fumble and a pick, but Lamar Jackson also drove them the length of the field when he needed to put them in position to tie the game. You know, and I've heard, you know, I think Boomer Esiason said earlier today on the Fan that, you know, Lamar just had to make like the simple pass. I mean, come on, man. If it hits your hands, catch it if you're Andrews. But point being, you know, Harbaugh did not have a really good game. He really didn't. And you had to chase points. And that's the problem. You're chasing points early. So you have 144 left in the game. Ravens are down by 8. Likely scores on the 24-yard pass play from Jackson, right? So now all of a sudden, Baltimore answers. They trim the deficit 27-25. You had an earlier missed 2-point conversion, which is now critical. So now you're down 2. So think about it. If you kick that extra point, you're down 1. You don't have to go for 2. And the game's tied. And then Andrews obviously drops a 2-point conversion, effectively ending the game, and Buffalo won 27-25. But Harbaugh does not get a pass because Harbaugh hasn't won in a long time. If you look at his coaching resume in the postseason, let's be honest. I mean, this guy, he's had his moments, but he's also had some bad moments. So you got to be, you have to be fair here. If I'm going to kill McVay, which I am for some of the play calling in the snow and the use of timeouts, if I'm going to get on Campbell for being way over aggressive at times and having a blow up in his face, you have to get on Harbaugh. And you can come out and you can defend Lamar, you can defend Mark Andrews, that's fine. But here's the difference. When you look at other guys that I've criticized or I've gotten on because they haven't won in a long time, what's the difference between, I don't know, like Campbell's got a good quarterback in golf, but let's just say a head coach that can't get over that hurdle. And I hate to kind of use the other head coach in that division, but can you honestly say over the last several years that Tomlin's had a significant signal caller? Harbaugh's had arguably the best quarterback in the NFL over the last 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, seriously. I mean, think about this. So we're going to talk about other head coaching failures. He's got 3 playoff wins since 2018. He's 3-6 in that span. And I think that's where the frustration comes from Lamar Jackson. And listen, kudos to Jackson. You're not going to throw, your teammate, your tight end under the bus. I can appreciate that. I can. And like I said, turnover, the fumble. Lamar also went 88 something odd yards, 80 odd yards when they needed him to. And Andrews had to fumble. He had to drop. I mean, it was a bad loss. It was a bad loss. It was actually kind of my, your what the F performer of the weekend. Was it the refs in the Kansas City game? Was it the running back for the Rams, who I'll get into? Was it Dan Campbell coaching? Was it Mark Andrews? So you can't really get on some of these other coaches and not get on Harbaugh. You just can't. It's not fair. It really isn't. Man chimes in. The Bears are going to figure out a way to mess this up. Oh, you're talking about the Ben Johnson. My man Vince chimes in, Steelers fan. Q, I believe you're over Saquon leaving, but can you honestly have confidence in the Giants front office if it becomes the missing piece to give you rival at second chip? It's not. It's a great point. Yes, I am definitely over it. And I have, fun with it because it's like adding salt needling to the wound. I have zero confidence in the Giants front office, but today's not about the Giants. It's about, again, what the Eagles are able to do with the pieces in place. And Hurts didn't play very well, and he was compromised. Josh Allen didn't play particularly well in the conditions and the weather, right? But you still got the win. I mean, that's what it's all about. Just go out there and win. Make the plays when you need to make the plays. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, they all won divisional round games this weekend. None of them stood out. Hurts had just under 200 yards and a touchdown. Mahomes had just over 190 yards and a touchdown. Allen had 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm not going to question any of them. The only thing I'll say with Hurts is better decision-making when we saw the play with the safety. I mean, if you look at the screenshot, he had a receiver wide open. And now, as I mentioned, he's laboring. He's not 100%, but who really is? But aside from that, I mean, you're talking about the conditions yesterday, and Sirianni decides, you know what, let's do a design rollout on 2nd and 5 in the snow. What are you doing? I mean, the Eagles did everything in their power to almost hand that game to the Rams. And again, the play calling by the Rams. The one thing that really bothers me is a 3rd and short, man. Pop a run. They just did not do that. And maybe they didn't have confidence in the kid after he fumbled. But after, he was running hard. So it just didn't make sense to me. It just did not make sense. And I thought Stafford played well. Stafford's not a guy that's going to beat you with his legs. He's not, but he's going to make the throw. And listen, their wide receivers made some plays. I mean, that game, if you were an Eagles fan, you probably sat back when they were up by a couple scores and you decide, you know what, let me put the phone on airplane mode and just relax and have a couple pops, have a couple snacks. And then all of a sudden, boom, they score. They get right down the field. Now, I don't know if the Rams beat them in better conditions. I don't know. But when the Eagles defensively needed to make a play, they made a play. And that's all you can ask. That's all you can ask. When the game is on the line, someone's got to step up. Somebody needs to make a play. And that's all you can ask as a fan. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday. I mean, Jalen Carter played 68 of 70 defensive snaps. This guy was double teamed 26 of 49 pass rushers. Are you kidding me? He had the 3rd down sack, right? The key 3rd down sack on the final drive, and then forced a pressure on the 4th down. And I don't want to hear this pass interference nonsense. I don't. The kid didn't come off the field. He was a beast. He saved the Eagles' bacon yesterday and Saquon running into the snow. But you get the W, and now you move on. And Washington is not going to be a pushover, Eagles fans. I got news for you. He's not. He's not. They're going to come out. Daniels is going to play with confidence, man. Washington will not be a pushover in this game. The tide turned for Detroit on that call on a face mask that did not happen. Kept Washington on the field, the Commanders, and they scored. Lions never recovered. Listen, there were bad calls all weekend in the NFL. I mean, come on, let's be honest here. Let's not split hairs. There were a lot of bad calls over the weekend in the NFL. The officiating stinks. I don't know what to say. Like, I'm getting tired. I think Kansas City getting back to an AFC championship had an opportunity to get back to the Super Bowl, to win it for a third straight season. Historic, the Mount Rushmores, if you will, is a fascinating, compelling, just wonderful story to watch, right? Because half the country wants to see it and the other half's like, come on, Buffalo, please, just one time. Or if Kansas City wins, I got to sit there like a jerk, right? Like a jerk. And I got to sit there and say to myself, it's going to be either Washington or the Eagles, which is where you have an opportunity to knock off the dynasty, right? Where you knock off the dynasty. Who knows? Who knows? Williams had 101 yards when he fumbled. Pretty sure he didn't touch the ball again. I'd have to look that up. The last drive, the second to last drive, and this is where I think the Rams. I mean, look, the turnovers hurt the Rams, and not being able to punch it in. I mean, we talk about this. The one thing I'll give them credit is that, okay, so the Eagles turn around and they score like that. You miss the extra point, they're up 6-0. But the Rams, a lesser team, maybe they deal with that gut punch and they falter. They scored. And then obviously Eagles took the lead again, 13-7. Rams came right back, made it 13-10. So it was a little bit of a, heavyweight affair, back and forth. Here we go. But the play that I thought also, the safety to me was huge because it's a 16-15 game now. So the Eagles just scored to make it 16-13. They traded field goals. Tied up, Eagles get the field goal, 16-13. Elliott's starting to connect. Then you get the safety. And you just knew defensively how the Rams were playing this, and it was a hell of a punt. And I think because Hurts was compromised, again, hung on to the ball a little too long, missed a wide receiver streaking across. Now, boom, you get the safety. It's a 16-15 game. Here's your turning point. Second and 2. 43. The fumble. Because then the Eagles get the ball and go right back and kick another field goal to go up 19-16. And then the Rams come right back the ensuing possession. And this time it was Stafford fumbled, right? Smith caused a fumble. I think he recovered as well. Then the Eagles got the other field goal, 22-16. And then boom, Barkley in the snow. And you figure the game's over. But the Rams are able to come right back down the field, man, really fast. I mean, they came right down the field, punched it in, forced a punt. That last drive, you had a 1st and 10. So you had Stafford to Higgins, Stafford to Kupp. You had Stafford to Kupp, who made a great catch. Stafford again, incomplete to Nakua. Then you had 3rd and 10. That's when they had an 11-yard pickup. I think it was to Robinson. 1st and 10. Pass play again. Pass play. False start. 2nd and 12. The 3rd and 2. Vince, great point. The 3rd and 2 from the Philly 13. Actually, 2nd and 12. You could have got some chunk yardage with some of these plays. The 3rd and 2, they elected to throw, and then obviously the 4th down play. But you're right. The kid Williams didn't touch the ball in that last series, which is crazy when you think about it. I mean, he was running hard aside from the fumble, and in those conditions, it's tough. It's really tough. I mean, listen, sometimes there's no panic. They had plenty of time. But then there's other games like last night in the AFC game where it's inexplicable to think that Harbaugh is only going to give Derrick Henry 16 touches. That's absurd. Talking about a 2,000-yard back. We are making a case for Henry as MVP along with Saquon, with the running backs, not to be dismissed. And Derrick Henry gets 16 touches? It made I don't want to hear about the flow of the game. He was averaging 5.3 yards a carry. They ran for close to 180 yards. 6 yards a carry. And you're not going to let him run the football. There were multiple times that Buffalo, again, just let Baltimore hang around. Even at 21-10, they punt it, and then Baltimore comes right back with a field goal. Then you turn around, they had a punt again, and Baltimore comes right back down the field. A couple more minutes and a couple more plays, Baltimore's winning that game. the fumble was critical, and then the Bills got the field goal. But when you needed Lamar to go right down the field, what did he do? He went right down the field. And I'm telling you, if Andrews gets that, if he catches that 2-point conversion, yeah, there's obviously time left. But if that game goes into overtime, I'm taking my chances with Baltimore. I really am. I'm taking my chances with Baltimore. All right, 25 past 4 o'clock hour, just cranking it up on a Manolo Man Up Monday edition of The Drive with Q. We'll take up to 6 o'clock straight up. Lloyd Vance should be joining us in a couple moments, but we will continue to open it up. You guys can get in on the conversation at 727-858-6650. That'll take you right in to the show. And we'll read off the comments. Any new commenters or listeners, let us know where you guys are commenting from. A lot of NFL news and notes to get into. Also, you have the college football championship game tonight as well. We'll dive into that. Head coaching carousel in the NFL. You can cross Ben Johnson off the list. He's going to become the Bears' new head coach. But I definitely want to get into the refereeing over the weekend because, man, I'll tell you, not even from a gambling betting standpoint, it's brutal. There's zero rhyme or reason to what the hell the NFL is doing when it comes to referee. Why do you have this expedited process? Why do you have to go to New York if you're not going to utilize it? Because I know right now I've got some interesting nuggets for you on that Kansas City Buffalo Bills AFC Championship game and who's going to be refereeing it. So we'll get into that as well on the other side, but I always want to hear from you guys. We will take you up to 6 o'clock straight up. Keep it locked in on a Monday edition of The Drive with Q right here inside the friendly confines of the Sports Radio 102.9 FM, The Game, Southwest Florida's newest game in town studios, powered by our good friends over at the Coastal Sports Network.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Don't forget to get social with us. Follow Q at Rich Q on Q. And now, back to Q.
Adopt U.S. Kids presents What to Expect When You're
Adopt. We don't want to hear another commercial break. No, we don't want to hear another commercial break. 727-858-6650. I don't know why these guys just fire. They decide we're going to fire off whenever we want to fire off. But that's okay. We don't want to worry about that because we're going to fire off our good friend, our guest, kind enough to join us on this Monday edition of The Drive with Q. That, of course, is Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football and Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game. You'll hear him tomorrow night. Typically, he's on at 8, but Angel is on the road today, so he will not be able to produce. So you'll get Lloyd tomorrow. Very busy show, and he's kind enough to join us for a couple moments. All right, brother. And then there were 4. All right, let's start. Biggest takeaway over the weekend. Washington going on the road and absolutely dismantling the Detroit Lions. Was it the Ravens not being able to get over the hump? Was it Saquon and his legs? Or was it the piss poor officiating in the Kansas City game?
You're making it tough on me trying to pick one thing, Q, but if I had to put a bullet point on something, you have to point to the greatness of Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders going on a road again and winning. We know that home teams are 8-2 this playoff round. They went in there, no fear, huge win, knocking off the NFC's number 1 seed. Took care of business, 45-31. It was close at certain points early in the first half, but they just kept coming and it didn't stop. So, the Commanders are a dangerous team. So right now I'd say, that is the biggest thing that you have to see from this round. But there was a lot of great performances. And, the officials, they got to get better.
Yeah, so let's stick with that Washington game. We thought it was going to be a good opportunity for Washington to stun Detroit. And you can't explain giving up 45 points of that Lions defense. Offensively, we'll get to Ben Johnson in a moment. Defensively, Aaron Glenn, not his best moment. Dan Campbell, I think, panicked. I think Goff got hurt. I think he was concussed after that one play. Again, we can get into the officiating, the refereeing. I mean, that clearly was a roughing, just unnecessary roughness hit on Jared Goff. Even when he threw the pick, that pick 6 should not have occurred, and that ball should have been a dead ball spot. But be that as it may, I mean, how the hell do you explain 28 points in the second quarter, 42 in the second quarter? I had to do a double take on that one. I mean, this Washington offense is really legit. And was this more or less all the credit to Washington, or we just saw that Detroit defense really starting to leak some oil, and obviously Jared Goff did not have his best performance under center?
Yeah, there's a little both there, Q. But I think the biggest thing is Washington got 5 turnovers from the Detroit Lions, and the Lions did not protect the football. Particularly, you talk about Jared Goff. Now all the questions are going to start again on him in terms of, is he the right guy? Is he the leader? He had a terrible game, as you know, and he had 3 interceptions, including that pick 6 that you talked about, sacked twice, and a bad fumble. The Lions kind of did not live up to their pedigree. Yes, Gibbs ran the ball pretty well, and Montgomery got back involved, and Amon-Ra St. Brown had his catches and everything. But it's just the demeanor of the Washington Commanders. They're just a young team. They're playing loose. Like we talked about before this game in our preview, they're playing with house money, and Dan Quinn is hitting on all the right notes with these guys in terms of this roster. When you look at them, talent for talent, they've got some holes. And their offensive line's not the best, and they lose constantly in this game to ACL, and we'll see how that factors into the next round. But Daniels just seemed relaxed. He was getting the ball out of his hands, getting into McLaurin and the rest of his playmakers. I think the addition of Eckler coming back from injury, that helps him a lot because he throws a lot of passes to the tight ends and the running back. So good win for them, but too many mistakes for the Lions.
Yeah, and it looks like they've lost their offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson has agreed to take over the Chicago Bears. He'll be announced as their new head coach. I mean, that's pretty much going to be a done deal. But you're right. I mean, you talk about Washington. We thought maybe they, quote, arrived early, and that hasn't really been the case. And, I'm watching it as a Giants fan. I'm seeing what Saquon and the Eagles are doing, then I'm seeing what Jaden Daniels is doing. I'm like, hey, this is fantastic. A couple meaningless games, one last year by Tommy Cutlets. I mean, you're looking at Jaden Daniels could have been possibly the franchise quarterback, but it is what it is. That's how life plays out sometimes. I believe they have enough horses and firepower to go on the road Sunday and beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, we got plenty of time to talk about that, but how about the Lions? I mean, if you're a team like the Lions and the Ravens, you let some big-time opportunities slip through the cracks this weekend.
They did. And the Lions just like, okay, they got to turn the page and see where they go. Much like we talked about earlier with the Niners, they have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and decide who they're going to be. Yes, they didn't have Hutchinson on defense, and that was a big loss for them. But now, much like the Eagles a couple years ago, they're going to lose probably both their coordinators. So Johnson, as you were saying, maybe he might get the Bears job. I'm hearing the Raiders maybe too, but we'll see how that shakes out. And then Aaron Glenn is looking like he's going to the Jets as well. So, it's they're going to have to rebuild. Dan Campbell obviously loves this team, has a good
Yep.
pulse on it, but you start talking about, I had a contribution in this. You're going to see a lot of people saying that, and then they're going to want to get paid someplace else or maybe look in other places. They are young, Terry and Arnold and some of the other guys that they have. They are going to mature, and the key question is golf, what are they going to do with him? But good season for Lions, but very disappointing for them. And their defense, that was a big whimper for them in this game.
Yeah, Lions go home. Washington moves on. All right, then you've got, the Ravens and the Bills. Listen, we thought maybe Derrick Henry was going to be tough to tackle in that fourth quarter. They only elect to give him 16-something odd touches. You can sit there and you can talk about Lamar with the pick or the fumble. Fine. But again, he drove 80-something odd yards. You can talk about the 2-point miscue with Andrews not catching it. I've heard some guys come out today on TV say, well, Jackson had to be a little too cute on the throw. I'm like, what are you talking about? It hit him in the friggin' hands. He also had to fumble. The bottom line is this. I don't understand why they only allowed Derrick Henry to touch the football 16 times. They did not have to panic even when they were behind in that game. And for all the criticism that I give other head coaches, I feel as though Harbaugh is getting off the hook today, because you can make the case he's had arguably the best quarterback in the NFL over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And look at his playoff record, Lloyd.
Yeah, it's a team game, Q, as you said. Everybody's got a little hand in this. Yes, Jackson did have the fumble and that bad interception to wrap. But, Andrews and some of the other receivers, they had drops, particularly that 2-point conversion was huge in this game. And the Bills win a turnover battle. They did not do a lot. It was kind of vanilla the whole game. They said, okay, we're going to run the football down the hill with Davis and Cook. And then Allen only had 128 yards passing. So it's a situation where he protected the football and they did a nice job defensively in terms of just bottling up Lamar when they need to. Now, at the end, it did get kind of antsy, and you were like, okay, maybe the Ravens may come back and win this one, because they were they were desperate. They were moving the football. They outgained the Bills, and you kind of wish that he had caught that 2-point conversion. And you say, okay, then where did the Buffalo Bills go from here? I still think, though, that it was the Bills' day, and they're moving forward, and they showed a lot of leadership in this game, particularly Sean McDermott and then Josh Allen. They were just smart with the football, efficient, and then they capitalized on those turnovers. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they move forward. Harbaugh, the one that I really questioned, Q, was when he went for 2 early, and it kind of came back. Yeah, it came back to bite him in the butt, and it is a situation now where, okay, everybody's going to point the fingers at Lamar and Harbaugh, and they got to figure out where to go forward. But they're going to stay the course. They're going to have all their guys back, and they got some things they got to clean up, particularly on defense.
Yeah, think about this, right? So if you don't go for that 2 and you kick the field goal, if you kick the extra point, then obviously you don't need to go for 2 late. And as great as a player Andrews has been, a safety valve for Lamar Jackson, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but you do have arguably the best quarterback over the last 3, 4, 5 years in the NFL. And what has Harbaugh done with it? I mean, you go out, you get the move for Derrick Henry. We talked about this on Friday's show. If you were the Lions at home, top seed, if you're Baltimore, having a guy like Derrick Henry and the year that he had, and arguably the MVP in Lamar Jackson, depending upon where you're hanging your hat, you can ill afford to get bounced in a divisional round. You just can't. And I'm starting to wonder, okay, you look at some of these coaches that had really good early success, but if you're Baltimore and you're Harbaugh, I mean, look, you can't sit there and say, we believe that Jackson's going to win the Super Bowl. It's inevitable. No, it's not. No, it's not. Marino thought, hey, I got an opportunity. I'm going to get there every single solitary year. He got there once in 85, and that was pretty much it. I mean, if anything, you felt this year was your year because of the defense, because of the offensive weapons. I get it. Flowers is banged up, but you still had the beast in Henry, and you still only gave him 16 touches.
Yeah, and Lamar's now 3-5 in the playoffs, and everybody's going to point to that. And, it's almost trending like Q. It reminds me almost like the Titans with Jeff Fisher. Yes, they've had some success, but they can't get over the hump, and they're like, oh, this is our coach, this is our quarterback, we're going to stick with them. And eventually the window may shut. Now, I still think they still have some time because some of their players are a little younger. except for Henry. But they got to get it more explosive at the receiver position. Some of the guys that he's throwing a football to, I'm like, is that? And I pretty much know all the rosters, but other than Bateman, they didn't have a lot of guys that were front line. Obviously, Flowers, as you pointed out, was not playing in the game, and Lamar, I thought, did a great job. But Monken, you're right, did not help the situation. Henry, 16 rushes, 84 yards. He did have that TD. I think they're going to always point to he's not a great pass catcher, and he had a couple drops where he threw him the football. But on those 2-point plays, I was surprised. My son was yelling, "Oh, they're going to go read option. They're going to go read option here." And they didn't. They didn't even, you figure, okay, at least hand it to him or fake hand it to him and then go from there. And he's one of their best players. And unfortunately, Andrews drops the ball. But, yeah, why take the ball out of whether it's Lamar or Henry's hands?
Yeah, and the other thing, too, on the play, and I get it, traction, your footing, sometimes you saw some of the wide receivers, especially in the Eagles and the Rams game, tippy toe, right? When they were trying to run their routes, and all of a sudden you got to backpedal a little bit, you got to turn awkwardly, you still got to make the catch. But what I found interesting, I was texting my buddies this too. If you go back and you go to the play chart, and after Baltimore fumbles, it's 24-19. The Bills have the lead. The Bills go right down the field, and they're sitting there 4th and goal from the Baltimore 2. And I was screaming at the TV, take the points at this point, because if anything, you want to force Baltimore to go down the field and tie it up and get a potential 2. Whereas if you go for it and you don't get it, that touchdown's going to win. And we're not even talking about, or at least give you the lead late, we're not even talking about Andrews and the 2-point miscue. So in that regard, I'll give McDermott a little credit. He was probably thinking, all right, I'm not going to play with fire here.
Yeah, Sean was conservative there, and I was yelling the same thing. I was like, kick the ball, take the points, and make it an 8-point game. And then Lamar, he was throwing the ball okay at spurts, but you were like, all right, make him go to distance, and he did, to his credit. I mean, he hit that big throw to Likely. I mean, he was spinning that football, and you're like, wow, this is getting really tight here. And I know all the Bills fans are starting to worry, like, uh-oh, is this going to be another comeback loss for us in the playoffs? And Lamar did a great job driving the team down the field. Now, there still was about a minute and 20, 30 left on the clock when Andrews dropped that football, and you like to see what Josh Allen could have did. But, the Bills are a tough team, and their defense was resilient. Bernard, that fumble was huge, that he punched the ball out and recovered it. That kind of really turned this game around. And they're going to probably have to play better going into Kansas City, and I know we'll talk about that later in the week. But good, solid win for them. And as you said, when you're outside like that, the conditions are not perfect, and the better teams play to it, and they protect the football in those situations. And the bad teams, they're not bad teams. The losing teams, like the Ravens, like the Rams, they're losing fumbles in that bad snowy weather.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. 4:45 on a Monday edition of The Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here. We're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off the first purchase. BYP20 is the promo code. Check the show notes. Also, Zen Auto Concepts. I mean, our drive of the game was going to be that Lamar Jackson drive, but obviously we kind of saw what transpired with the failed 2-point conversion. Also, Played Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. Use sports equipment and more. They'll give you a good bang for the buck. Open 7 days a week. Lloyd Vance is kind enough to join us, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. You'll catch him tomorrow, 8 to 9 on 102.9, as opposed to on a Monday night. Him and Kevin are typically live on the air for 60-plus minutes. So you mentioned the conditions, and then you had the Eagles and the Rams. We'll save Kansas City last. I thought the recipe was pretty simple. Just run the ball. The one thing about Washington next week, their run defense is poor. And I thought Tampa Bay did not take advantage of it. You can run on Washington. The Lions were able to run on Washington. The Eagles should be able to run against Washington. And I know Hurts got banged up. I know he held the ball too long for the state. Look, you didn't need the gaudy numbers yesterday as long as you had number 26. And I thought they gave the Rams every opportunity to steal that game. And the Rams didn't help themselves because the Rams got punched in the gut early. Eagles score. Rams had a couple miscues. You had the kid Williams with the fumble. He didn't even touch the ball on that last drive. I'll get to some of the play calling. But I thought the Rams, to their credit, under those conditions, hung in there. But man, I'll tell you, if you're an Eagles fan, you're watching that game thinking to yourself, are they going to go right down the field after they just scored and win the game?
Yeah, you're looking at they scored quickly, and
Yeah.
then they were able to stop the clock. And the Eagles kind of played in their hands. Jalen Hurts took a big sack there, and he had he got sacked a lot in this game, Q, and I think it was 5 times or so.
Yeah,
And
that sack was huge, by the way. I didn't even mention that. Thank you. The sack was huge. And the other thing was 2nd and 5 when you have a design rollout in the snow. That didn't make sense. But yeah, that sack basically flipped the field for the Rams, give them an opportunity late.
Yeah, it was actually 7 sacks, my mistake
Crazy.
there. And a situation where the Rams, they started clicking, but we know the Rams were not built for these outdoor conditions. They're an indoor team coming east. And they finally turned it up at the end. They had a lot of drops early on. Puka picked it up late. He had some drops earlier in the game, but he made a spectacular catch. And you're like, wow, this is starting to slip away from the Eagles. And you knew it was going to come down to the end. And to his credit, Jalen Carter right now is just becoming a beast. Q. 2 sacks, particularly that game ender, and he had 2 tackles for loss in this game. So he's a young man that they're going to build around. And the other side of it is Saquon, as you said, just spectacular in terms 26 rushes, 205, 2 TDs. I mean, these are long TDs, 62 yards, 78 yards. He's a monster. And you got to give credit to the guys up front. I mean,
No doubt.
The way Stoutland has built that offensive line is just incredible. They have 2 All-Pros on it, and questionably maybe all 5 could have got some votes. And the rejuvenation of Becton is really what has impressed me this season. I mean, he is just clearing people out of the club, him and Lane Johnson on that right side. When the Eagles need to get a big run, that's where they're going. So, tough physical win for them.
Yeah.
I know a lot of fans are going to debate, did Hurts do a lot, and enough, et cetera. But they won the game, and the Eagles are looking like the favorite going into Sunday.
I mean, listen, they should. They have home field advantage. Obviously, you've got a rookie quarterback in Daniels who's playing above and beyond. You have a team that I think is, exceeded their expectations in Washington. But the house money, always scary. What did we say on Friday's show earlier in the week? We even said this on BYP. You get to that 4th quarter, if you're a Lions fan and all of a sudden Washington's up by 7, 4, 10, or they're behind 6 to go, it's got a little dicey, right? So I think Washington is going to definitely have a real good puncher shot to beat the Eagles here on Sunday. Now, Hurts with the injury, if he's going to be compromised or not. I mean, you always see after a quarterback takes a hit like that, all right, we're going to run the ball a little bit here and there. I mean, listen, you're right. When the defense needed to make a stop and they needed to make a play, that was huge. And I also thought the turning point in the game was after the safety, the Rams got the ball right back and fumbled. So you don't know, right? I mean, I don't know how it plays out in different conditions, but the Rams, after the safety, they fumbled 2 out of their next 3 possessions, including a punt. And then finally, so they wasted 3 possessions where they're critical. Finally got the ball, went down the field. But I'm curious, that last series where they turned the ball over on downs, that 3rd and 2, they didn't even offer, an explanation why you're not handing the ball off. They didn't even run that ball that last series. It was just Stafford. I thought maybe you dink and dunk a little bit. They took too many shots down the field. I was a little surprised by the play calling.
Yeah, Q. And the thing is, McVay will probably tell you, given the conditions I was watching, I was like, Williams is known to be a fumbler. And sure enough, he laid that ball on a carpet, and I think he just lost confidence in him and went away from him. He just did not trust him to hand the football off there. They dropped back, and Carter again gets in the backfield. This time he got a QB hit, which caused Stafford to kind of sail that throw, and it really was, it's like, Nakua couldn't even get near that ball. So it's like, sometimes you wonder why they outthink themselves sometimes, Q, some of these offensive guys. But the Eagles were dialing up the pressure. Fangio and his guys up front were doing a great job. Zach Bond was flying all over the field. And it's going to be interesting without Q Mitchell and that shoulder injury. Is that going to linger into this Sunday in the championship game? But I thought they covered it up well when they did not have Q Mitchell out there.
Dave in Delaware chimes in on Facebook and on XQ. You're talking about Lamar Jackson. He's got to take a hit today. They had 23 first downs. They had 400 yards of offense, 240 yards of rush, 240 yards of passing. They ran the ball for close to 170 something odd yards. They were 2-3 in the red zone. They were only penalized 5 times. Turnovers killed them. I know it was Andrews. I know it was Lamar Jackson, but how are you not getting on Jackson more? I don't, again, but my reply to Dave, and obviously he's probably an annoyed Ravens fan, when you need Lamar Jackson to take you down the field, that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, and I think Lamar did look early on in the game. Yes, he had his struggles. That interception, I talked about the wrap, that the fumble snap, and then he tried to make a play, and then he fumbled the ball, and Von Miller picks it up. Yeah, they are miscues, but I just thought his overall play outweighed that, and particularly at the end of the game, Q, that we were talking about. Where he drove his team down the field, got the touchdown when he needed. And he put the ball on Andrews. He couldn't do any more except basically hand it to him. So, yeah, he's going to get a little hand in this, but I would not say he was the overall reason that they lost that game.
All right, how about the refereeing in Kansas City's game? Man chimes in. There's always going to be bad calls. It's annoying. Can't leave the game up to the red and white stripes. I mean, I don't get it. Like, you've got Jared Goff being decapitated, and there's no call. And then you got Patrick Mahomes just basically being touched. And what's really annoying, if this is the 70s, 80s, or even the early 90s, they're cracking him when he's got a foot. Like, I think the NFL, and you're probably going to think I'm cuckoo with this, the NFL needs to get no more sliding. Sorry, no more sliding. Because every time the quarterback slides, you got to put on the brakes, or if you even touch them right away, they want even Hurts did it yesterday a couple times where these were clean touches off the slide. They want the flag. Patrick Mahomes, he has a tendency, he slows up near the sideline. What am I supposed to do running 60, 70 miles an hour? And I got to slow up with this guy? It's utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, and I tweeted out during the game, I like them Holmes rules. They remind me a lot of Jordan back in the day. You couldn't put your hands on him. He's getting a call every time. And he knows that, and he's going to take advantage of the officials' overzealousness. And the Chiefs are getting the calls, and that's what we always say, the magic's in the air. But, think of the Yankees all the time, Duke basketball, when they were on their roll. They always seem to get the call or whatever they needed to win the game. Now, Houston had 8 penalties to the Chiefs 4. And, yeah, I think Mahomes goaded them into a couple of those calls, and he was trying to get some other ones with the, pseudo flop. But you got to play the game. And the officials – you can't let them get involved. And when you really break it down, the numbers and everything, Houston just couldn't stop Karlaftis. 3 sacks in this game. The Chiefs' defense was dominant. And then Mahomes protected the football. And Kelsey, let's not forget him. He really turned it up a notch in the playoffs once again. 7 catches, 117, had a TD, and they had no answer for him. So, yeah, the officiating had a piece of it. But I think overall the Chiefs – they're just too tough in the divisional round. Mahomes now 7-0 in that round.
Yeah, but the issue is this, though. Yes, they're the better team. They're back-to-back defending Super Bowl champs. They're a dynasty. We get it. But you got that second drive of the game, right? Second drive for the Chiefs. That is setting the tone for the game. And you got Mahomes missing Kelsey. Should have been an easy third down conversion. But what happens? You get bailed out by a penalty. They turn around. You call the roughing the passer. I think it was Will Anderson. You got a fresh set of downs. You hand the offense 4. Even Buck and Aikman didn't agree with the call. I mean, I'm watching it right now. It's utterly ridiculous to call. I mean, they're talking about it right now. It's like it's not even a hit to the head. That's the problem I have.
Right, and I think in the UFL they review those plays and. These officials are overzealous. They don't want anybody touching their bonus baby quarterbacks, particularly Mahomes. He's the golden quarterback of the moment, and you can't get near him. And it's like with Brady, where he used to brush his helmet on his follow through or something like that, and they throw the flag. And they got to find a way to review this, or because a couple of these, the one you're talking about, where two guys slid, they actually hit each other, And then the Anderson one. Mahomes kind of turned, and he didn't. That was not helmet to helmet. So yeah, you feel bad for the defensive guys because it's totally slanted to the offensive side of the football at this stage in the game.
Well, the problem now is, though, look, half the country is going to root for Kansas City because they want to see him get back. Hey, this has never been done, right? The other half, it's like you're so indifferent, you get tired of seeing the Chiefs, or maybe it's 30-30-30. The other 30 is going to sit there and turn around and be like, it doesn't matter what's going to happen because, eventually it's going to play right into them, right? So Sean Hockley is going to officiate the NFC Championship game. Or I'm sorry. No, let me get you the AFC. I'm going to get you that in a minute and why I think it's pertinent. Because the crew, if they go with a crew that's familiar with Kansas City, right away, the red flags are going to be, here we go again. Here we go again. Here we go again. Who's the officiating crew? What have they done? What do they go? Okay, here you go. So I have it right here. Pardon me. So you've got Monday, just the championship game was set. Referee assignments for the Chiefs versus Bills. Clete Blakeman is set to call the AFC game. Here you go. Mahomes has posted a 5-6 record in games called by Blakeman. The most recent game was 20-14 Christmas Day loss to Vegas in 2023. In that game, Kansas City had 5 penalties called on them for 44 yards.
Wow.
Josh Allen, on the other hand, has secured a 6-2 record in games with Blakeman as the official. And the most recent came in week 17 against the Jets when Buffalo won 40-14. The Bills were penalized. Are you ready? The Bills were penalized 7 times for 60 yards. The Jets were penalized 16 times
I remember that.
for 120 yards.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And with that information.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. And I think right now Kansas City is only a 2-point favorite, and the officials are going to get involved. And my biggest thing is always the pass interference one, where the ball goes up and every receiver every time wants a call.
Looking around.
So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if the Bills can go in there, and then that trend that you're talking about may lend to the Bills finally being their time. Maybe the NFL wants to see the Bills in the Super Bowl. So
the problem, though, again, I hate to harp on it, but to play out of bounds, it's a love tap. It is a love tap. Like, is Elway, Brady, Montana, Manning, even these guys were getting freaking cracked. I remember the play where I think Brady rolled out and almost literally his head almost came clean off his shoulders. I think that game was against Buffalo back in the day. And no flag.
Buffalo, the safety celebrating after he knocked his helmet off. Brady just picks it up. He's like, okay. Luckily he was all right. They didn't check him for concussion back then, but yeah, Q, it's a fine line. And then you have that flopping type, because he ran and Aikman called it, where he's running and he kind of slows down. He's like, all right, let him push me. So they didn't give him the call there, but I was waiting for it to happen because we've just seen it so many times. And Mahomes has that gamesmanship that we talk about. It's all the intangibles.
Oh, listen, you got 4 great quarterbacks left. I mean, seriously, you got Mahomes, you got Allen. I mean, what more do you want? You would have taken Mahomes and Jackson. What more do you want? And then you got Hurts, where people are still going to debate his merits and his resume. And you have pretty much a stud franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels. I mean, that's, we might sit here right now and put Jaden Daniels top 10. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. And we haven't seen a rookie quarterback play like this. And I know you're going to hear me say it over and over again. I said it when we were always talking about Purdy in the championship game. No rookie quarterback has ever made it to the Super Bowl. But, Jaden Daniels may be the guy to break that trend. I mean, that's how well he's playing. He's just relaxed, and his teammates believe in him. And let's face it, Q, he is carrying this team. because there's just not a lot of weapons on his team. You have McLaurin, you have Eckler coming back, and you have old Zach Ertz. So, he's playing at a level we have not seen from a rookie in a long time.
727-858-6650. Trevor chimes in, the refs enforce the NFL script writers narrative. That's what a lot of people say when Kansas City plays. You mentioned Jaden Daniels, right? As far as, a rookie quarterback making a championship game. You also mentioned Purdy. So you had, correct me if I'm wrong, Roethlisberger. Rookie year we're talking. Roethlisberger when they went 15-1. Flacco.
Yes.
Mark Sanchez.
Yes.
Purdy, Daniels. And you know who the sixth one was?
I know who it is. Let's see. It was Sean King.
There you go.
And it was a game. I was talking to my son about this before I came on air. They probably should have won that game because there was a catch. Ricky Prohl, the ball was
the Rams.
They would have, if they had replayed that, they probably would have overturned that. And then there was a Burt Emanuel.
That was the Burt Emanuel game, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So it was a close one there for the Tampa Bay Bucks. They were on a rise, and all those teams that you talked about, their defenses were great. I mean, that Bucks defense was number 3 that season.
That's where that gave up 14 points.
Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp, all those guys on that defense.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? Because Sean King, Trent Dilfer started, played the first 7, 8, 9 games, and then Sean King came in 4-1, I think he was.
Yeah, came out of Tulane, and he just did his job. And Tony Dungy believed in him in terms of, just manage the game. And that defense was so great. They won the Super Bowl for Gruden later on. But that defense was so great that, they were in every single game.
Bears have named Ben Johnson. I mean, it's pretty much a done deal. Their new head coach. So this is what happens, right? You have a lot of success, and then all of a sudden, boom, here we go. It looks like the Bears are finalizing a deal to hire Ben Johnson as new head coach via Tom Pelisseri. I know ESPN's reporting it as well. You're coming in. This is what you want, right? If you're a Bears fan, you want a creative, offensive-minded guy, and you want to be able to stick him with a young quarterback in Caleb Williams.
Yeah, the big sticking point was Ryan Poles there, the general manager. They brought him back, and they also have Kevin Warren, the president. So, it's going to be a 3-headed monster there with the Bears, and you're going to bring Johnson in there. As you said, Caleb Williams needed somebody to tutor him. I had been hearing rumbles that they might go with another defensive-minded coach, and I didn't think that was a good idea because he needs somebody to help him in terms of reading defenses. Yes, his numbers weren't not that bad, but held the ball way too long, took too many sacks, and I think Johnson will be able to come in there and help clean some things up. But such a competitive division. But the funny thing is, Q, as great as that division was with 3 teams making the playoffs, they all got knocked out.
Well, the other thing is you also just stole a coordinator, right? I mean, think about it. Bears-Lions rivalry. You just basically stole them away. And I know Jacksonville was looking. They had a lot of heavy interest in Johnson. So I don't even think I was reading, and listen, correct me if I'm wrong. I glossed over this. Did Johnson even have an in-person interview?
He may have not, but the thing is, it may have been a wink-wink, you know what I mean, Q, where they were like, all right, we want you to come here. And I had heard rumblings that, he was their number 1 guy. And they had a couple of interviews with some guys like Eddie George and this and that. But you knew all along that they wanted Johnson to come in there and help with Caleb Williams' maturation. So we'll see if it's a good fit. They have a lot of offensive pieces there, particularly Roma Dunzier and Komet and some of the other pieces. But they got to fix the offensive line on the Bears.
And think about it. A lot of the pullback or blowback was he just didn't want to be part of Trent Baalke, the GM. I mean, that's crazy if you think about it, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, Baalke's on a very hot seat. He's a former Niners general manager, and Jacksonville's a tough situation because it's kind of an outpost of the league, and Shad Khan's kind of hands off. And, it's going to be interesting to see who takes that job. It'll probably be a coach with lesser pedigree, I think.
Is there any thought that Ben Johnson would try to bring Aaron Glenn with him?
Maybe if Glenn doesn't get a job, but I'm hearing that Glenn he's in the driver's seat with the Jets.
For the Jets, so, I think that's right hire.
He is going to have to find a defensive person too, because The defense does have some pieces, Q, but they allow teams to move the football on them way too easily.
Yeah, I've been talking about. I mean, Aaron Glenn. You cannot let Adam Glenn leave the Jets facility. You just can't. I mean, think about this. Last season, the Bears finished top 5 in total offense. Okay, think about that. Top 5 in total offense. The last season they did that was 1977. That tells you they've had a horrible offense for almost 40-something odd years, for well over 40-something odd years. So now you bring in Ben Johnson and look at his rankings over the last 3 seasons. 4th best offense in 2022, 3rd best offense in 2023, 2nd best offense in 2024. He's got to be able to coach up Caleb Williams, right? Because I still think there's a lot of, and they also have to get the horrible taste out of their mouth. I mean, think about this. Their season ended when Daniels had that Hail Mary. And even though Washington lost, I think the following week, that still gave them the confidence to just go on and have this march towards the playoffs and now the NFC Championship game. The Bears never recovered from that. You're hoping Johnson comes in and the first thing he's thinking about, listen, we do your job, right? Instill discipline in these players. I think they needed to make a splash higher, and they've got weapons. They do. They have a couple running backs. We know they got Johnson. We know they got Swift. They got to utilize him a little more. They got some wide receivers. I don't know where you're at with Caleb Williams. He didn't put up bad numbers. The problem was the offensive line didn't protect him.
Yeah, and
horrible.
Yeah, and Johnson's going to be hired to be the anti-Eberflus. He's not. He shouldn't be a player's coach. He should bring some discipline, particularly offensive side of the football, and try to clean some things up. And I think he will. And there's enough talent on his team. Sans the offensive line, which has a lot of work. There's enough offensive pieces that they could score some points. So, going to be interesting there in Chicago. It's a prime landing spot. We know that it's a football crazy town.
I think it's a good hire. I do. I think it's a good hire. And we'll see. Dave chimes in. Josh Allen, the alien, abducted the Ravens. Josh Allen, he didn't play. I mean, he's my MVP. And Dave, appreciate you chiming in, pal. He didn't play lights out. But again, what do you need to do? Make the play when you need to make the play. Now, they're going to need a big effort on the road against Kansas City. They really are.
Yeah, and that's what it took last time. Let's not forget these two teams met in Week 11, and the Bills. I know it was a home game for them. Win 30-21, so they were the first to 30. Put up some good numbers, and Josh Allen was carrying his team. He had a rushing touchdown, and he also had a passing touchdown. He threw for over 300 total yards in this game. So it's going to be interesting if Spagnuolo, what he dials up for Kansas City defensively.
That's another very interesting point, and my buddies and I were talking about it. When he needed to dial it up, he dialed it up against the Texans, and that's typically what he does, right? And then conversely, when the Eagles needed to dial up defensively, this is why when you draft tackles and edge rushers or guys that can get to the quarterback, and everyone's like, you got too many. You can never have enough pass rushers, or you rotate these guys in and out, and they typically will make the play when the play's needed the most. But you're right. I mean, Spags might go down. I mean, is it possible Spags might get in the Hall of Fame as a defensive coordinator? I mean, that's how great he's been throughout the course of his career.
Yeah, he's done a great job with it. And that was always, I talk with guys on the committee, about that. They should probably have an assistant type award or whatever for the Hall of Fame. Just getting some of these guys that are lifers in there, that have done a great job. And Spagnuolo is one of those coaches. Yeah, not a great head coach, but what an assistant coach. I mean, the architect of so many big victories that won Super Bowls.
Let me get to a couple comments. Let me see here. Kevin, North Jersey, chiming in on XQ. You mentioned Glenn not leaving the building with the Jets. I think it's a smart hire. I still don't know what they're going to do with Aaron Rodgers. Do you and Lloyd think that Rodgers is going to play next year? I've said it. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is coming back. I think he's done.
Yeah, I agree with Q. I just don't think Woody Johnson really wants him back. And there's just not a lot of interest around the National Football League and Rodgers at this point at 41 years old and how he kind of limped through the season.
Joe D, South Philly Q. I know it's absolutely destroying you inside watching Saquon Barkley go nuts.
What do you think? He thinks you're Mara. Mara was on the one on there crying, and Joe Shane should have listened to his son. I think his son right away was like, yo, Dad, you need to get this Jaden Daniels kid. So
Listen,
it's crazy how this works out.
did I not say last year during the season, trade him? Not the season, that just last year when the Giants were bad and there was a report that Buffalo was interested in Saquon Barkley because you knew they didn't have the building blocks in place. They just didn't. And that's why I made the argument, get value. It would have hurt me to get value. And to Joe's point, and I know Tom and Summer's point, chiming in, having a little fun, L coming in as well from Philly. It bothered me when it originally happened because you just knew when they let him walk. I think I text you like, watch him friggin' sign with the Eagles. Like it was like an ongoing joke.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's doing it with the Eagles, it's not a surprise because they have one of the best offensive lines in football. But it shows you what happens when you're on a winning team, a winning organization, a winning culture. I mean, he looks like a Hall of Fame back right now. And I'm not saying he wasn't a very good back with the Giants. Early on before he got hit with the injuries, he put together, one or two. His rookie season was historic. But now you're looking at a back that this is the best running back on the planet right now. I mean, 3, 4, 5 yards, boom. Then he's ripping off 30. Then he's ripping off 40. Then he's ripping off 60 something odd yards in the snow. I mean, this is when he's engaged and you got the offensive line and he's healthy and the change of scenery and you're playing on a team that wins. What do you expect?
Yeah, Q. And this is what you and I talked. We debated, like, was Saquon worth that amount of money? Because let's face it, last year they were not paying running backs, and that was kind of the barometer. And as a guy that's followed his Eagles the whole life, written about him, etc., no one expected Saquon to do what he's doing. I mean, this is an all-time season. I mean, runs for 2,000 a regular season. And you're right, Q. He's unstoppable behind this offensive line, particularly that right side of Becton and Lane Johnson. I mean, they're road graders out there, and he's taking it to his advantage. He's running clean on a lot of these runs.
That's the thing.
Just replay that 62-yard
like part.
I mean, the hole was there. Goodbye, and he slowed down to rub it into Verse's face, and he's just playing very well, and he's just playing at a high level. So you tip your cap to him, and as Giants and Giants fans, you kind of move on.
Hey, listen, if you're an Eagles fan right now, anytime you give the ball to number 26, he has the threat to take it to the house. Let me get to a couple more. Nick in Wallington chimes in. Q, you mentioned Jalen Hurts and his vision early on. I think Sirianni actually said that he didn't have anywhere to go with the football on that safety. That's BS. Yeah, I mean, I think he clearly had, I don't know, it might have been Goddard. He had the tight end right across the middle. Yeah, in the flat. Listen, does Jalen Hurts hold on to the football too long? Yes. Does Jalen Hurts sometimes take really bad sacks? Yes. Does Jalen Hurts make poor decisions at times? Certainly. But then you also saw Jalen Hurts keep it and then basically run right up the gut for a long touchdown, and he beat him with his legs. We've seen Jalen Hurts make plays with his arm. Jalen Hurts is a tough quarterback. The numbers don't have to be gaudy, especially when you have Saquon Barkley. I mean, how can you nitpick? They're in the friggin' NFC Championship. If Jalen Hurts only dropped backs to pass 25 times, 20 times, and they win 21-10, and Saquon has 160, does it really matter? Does it make Jalen Hurts any less of a quarterback? No. Like, this narrative where these guys have to go out and put up monster numbers are ridiculous. Mahomes didn't put up monster numbers over the weekend. Josh Allen didn't put up monster numbers over the weekend. Jalen Hurts didn't put up monster numbers. But what all three have in common? They all won.
Yeah, and Q, you and I talked about this, the proliferation of fantasy football and these parlay bets now. Everybody wants the numbers, and they're always talking about, oh, this guy didn't throw for 304 touchdowns. Well, you know what? It's winning the football game. That's all that matters. And particularly, you're talking about outdoor games in tough conditions. The snow coming down, and he did a good job protecting the football. He did have a couple fumbles that were jumped on. But the Eagles had no turnovers in this game, and Hurts kept moving to change. 7 rushes for 70 yards, and you talk about that 44-yard run where he was dynamic. Now, we'll see how that knee injury affects him. I'm going to talk to one of the reporters that's been at practice and everything on my show. But but he's doing what he needs to do. And somebody put a side by side. His numbers are very similar to what Josh Allen did yesterday, and they both won the game. And I tell you what, the Bills fans are probably like, "Who cares? Let's get ready for Kansas City." And then I've just been hearing over and over again today. You know, I'm in the Philadelphia area, how Eagles fans are upset because they think Hurts almost lost the game. I was like, which is ridiculous.
I don't get it. It's like, stop with the stat checking. He made enough plays. I mean, you have number 26 back there. You got an all-world running back and a great offensive line. What I feel as though there's a sentiment of the Eagles fans, the fan base, that would rather Hurts go 20 of 25 for 288 and 3 touchdowns, and they friggin' lose the game, than Hurts go 18 of 29 for $167 and 1 touchdown, and they win the game. It's beyond comical at this point. Like, what more do you want him to do? And I've defended, I've defended Hurts a lot on the air. They didn't play well last year down the stretch. He was obviously not 100%. They didn't show up for that game against Tampa Bay on the road in the playoffs and got waxed. But they came out of the gate this year. They beat who they had to beat. And again, last year after 11 games, we were talking about Jalen Hurts potentially being an MVP. A couple of years ago, if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles win the Super Bowl and don't get, screwed, if you want to say they got screwed late against Kansas City, the narrative changes. We're not even having this discussion about the head coach. We're not having a discussion about the quarterback. We're just not. Now, if he goes out and spits the bit, then on Monday, it might be, well, he wasn't 100%. But what quarterback is 100%? Like, if Jalen Hurts says, I'm fine, I'm 100%, and goes out and has 3 picks and a fumble, and they lose, then we can get on Jalen Hurts on Monday. But right now, on this Monday, it's not the time to get on him.
No, it's not the time. They won the game. And think about that late third down play where he had to have it. He hit A.J. Brown on that slant. They moved the chains, and it was a good clock drive. And he's a leader. That's what he's doing. He's leading this team. He's efficient. Yes, he does not have these eye-popping numbers, but what quarterback does, at this stage in the game? And the Eagles are built around that offensive line, Saquon, and let's not forget the defense. The defensive Fangio is playing at an extremely high level, and that's championship formula type football.
All right, D and the DMV chimes in. Q, I'm a Ravens fan. I'm sick to my stomach. There's absolutely no way 9 out of 10 times Andrews is dropping that pass. It's absurd what Boomer Esiason said earlier today on the radio, that it's on Jackson. Catch the effing football. I mean, he was
wide open, and you saw he tried to catch it in his bread basket, and it kind of moved around, and then he was like, oh crap.
Yeah, I'm not going to put it up there with Jackie Smith with the Cowboys, because that's a Super Bowl.
Yeah, Jackie always remembered it was right in his hands, and longtime Cardinal, Hall of Fame guy, and he finally got his chance with the Cowboys, and he dropped the ball.
Yeah,
so
Vern Lundquist saying he's got to be, bless his heart, he's got to be the sickest man in America. All right, early look, just a quick gloss of these games. Obviously, with the lines opening, we'll see where the money is going to go. Eagles right now sitting at 5.5. And it opened at 5. I figured it'd be 5.5, maybe 6. We'll see. Hurts, 100%. They're going to play coy with this. And then you've got Kansas City at home laying 2. Both totals sit at 47.5. Do you expect a high-scoring game in either one of these?
I think the chance of a high-scoring game or better in the Kansas City-Buffalo game. So if you're looking at the over, that 48 as over under, look at that game. I think the Eagles game is going to come down to physicality and which team is going to show up. And obviously quarterback play, we talk about who's going to protect the football, and is the moment too big for Jaden Daniels, because we know rookie quarterbacks kind of shrinking these big championship games. So it's going to be back and forth. I'll give you my pick later in the week, but I'm looking at it. Home field advantage has been huge this playoff, so I'll just throw that out there and just see.
I'm a little surprised you don't think the Washington game could be high scoring. I think the Commanders are going to be able to move the ball. And I mentioned their run defense. Tampa Bay, Bucky Irving only had 17 carries, and he was averaging 4.5, and that was in the 23-20 loss. So imagine if Tampa Bay actually ran the ball more in that game. And then I just mentioned what Detroit was able to do. Let me give you the numbers. and obviously this was a track meet. Gibbs averaged 7.5. I can't really count Williams averaging 61 yards because he carried the ball one time. I mean, it was actually,
He also threw an interception, which killed him.
There you go. Right. Montgomery, 7 times for 29 yards. And then Goff had 1 carry. It was flushed out of the pocket for 7. Point being is they averaged 8.7 yards. I mean, Gibbs is a beast. Gibbs averaged 7.5 yards, and he had a long of 33. And I bring it up because if you look at Saquon this season, in the regular season, and I'll go back, and I think he broke off a couple of big runs in that very, very early meeting. The first, I think the game was early, it was maybe around November.
Yeah, the first game was week 11. Saquon had
146.
146, 198 total in this game. He had TD runs of 39 and 23 in that game. And don't forget, that was the game that no, it was the second one where Jalen Hurts got banged up. So
correct. But point being is they ran for over 200 in that game. Gainwell had 47 yards. They averaged 5.7 yards a touch. So I say all to say this. This might not be the game where you need Jalen Hurts to throw 30 times.
Right. It's a game of possession to me when I look at it for the Eagles. They want to possess the football. You use that offensive line, use Saquon's ability. It hurts missing in a couple key throws here and there. And then let's not forget the Eagles defense has been they've been playing lights out. Yeah, I know this week they let up 22 points to the Rams, but typically they've been holding opponents right around 20 points or less, around 17 or so all season. So it's going to be tough for Jaden Daniels, and they're going to have to find ways to move the football, and we'll see what kind of game Zach Ertz has.
What do you think right now? Again, I don't think Stafford played poorly. I just think the offensive line collapsed late. He's 36. He's got 2 years remaining on his contract. Is this something he and the Rams try to adjust the contract to make it work for the next couple years? I mean, I'm going to take you down the rabbit hole. I bring it up because you got 2 teams in New York that don't have a quarterback. And the Giants don't have any quarterback on a contract. I'd have to look at the dead cap. I have to look at these hits. But can you see Matthew Stafford as a bridge for either one of those teams or any other team if he decides to move on from the Rams?
I just think McVay and him are been on the same page, and they're going to say, okay, it was the weather and this and that. And they had a pretty good comeback season. Let's not forget they started very slow this season, and then they won a ton of games down the stretch. That division is always very competitive. I think they'll bring back Stafford on probably a value contract and try to get him some more weapons, particularly Cooper Kupp. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to come back for them. And then their defense has some good young pieces in Verse and Fisk, but they'll get some other guys to come in there. So I think Stafford comes back. And, yeah, it's going to be interesting with those 2 New York teams, too, in terms of quarterback position. That's going to be a question all season.
I told you I'm not sold. I'm not sold on either quarterback coming out, whether it's Ward or Sanders. I'm just not. If you trade the pick and get assets, so be it.
Right. I don't. It's looking more and more like, okay, go with a veteran bridge type guy and then go from there. Cam Ward and Sanders, they both have question marks around them, and yeah, you're going to be taking a chance taking a.
Well, listen. Either way, it doesn't matter because they are going to they're going to stink next year. So, I mean, that's it. I've accepted that.
Sometimes you got to get really bad to rebuild and just go from there.
Yeah, but for how long? It's like their win total is probably going to be 4 or 5 games again.
Yeah, and you always see a team kind of go from worst to first. Thing about the Browns.
Oh, but Washington
this year. So you can have a quick turnaround, but you have to have that iron triangle that we talk about. You got to have a GM that builds a good roster. You have to have the right head coach, and you have to have the right quarterback.
Well, that's the problem. I don't believe they had the right GM in place. I'm not sold on the head coach, but I can also sit there and say that for a couple other teams right now. The quarterback position, it's vital. It's vital. If you don't have the hit with the quarterback, you're done. Like you're absolutely done. And what's happening, you don't listen. Jared Goff is a good quarterback. We would agree. He's a good quarterback, but I bet you they're having a conversation in Detroit. And I think he was affected after that hit. He might have been playing concussed, but I guarantee you they're having the conversation and she's the guy going forward.
No, definitely. He's a B, he's a B plus quarterback. And they're like, is this a guy that can carry the team to a Super Bowl championship? And you got to, you got to wonder. And San Francisco's asking the same thing about Brock Purdy. And there's only so many Patrick Mahomes out there in the league, and some of these guys, look at Justin Herbert. There's question marks about him. He led the Chargers to the playoffs and he played awful, and then that wild card game in a game they were favored in. So, yeah, it's hard finding a quarterback. And that's why when these coaches and GMs pick the wrong guy, it's a killer and their career's pretty much over.
Yeah, well, it should also be the coaches and the GM's careers over. Scotty on Facebook chimes in. Q, as a Bears fan, a disheartened Bears fan, as a lonely Bears fan, I'm actually happy with this hire. Good point on Williams. I'm not sold entirely on him, but they have some pieces in place. Hey, it starts with the head coach. You get a head coach to come in and groom a young quarterback. You fix the offensive line. That's a hell of a division, man. With Minnesota, that's another team. Like, what does Minnesota do with Darnold? We're talking about Minnesota. Green Bay. You don't think after the playoff loss, they're questioning Jordan Love right now?
Yeah, Jordan Love made some bad decisions in that game and very inconsistent at points this season, particularly at the end. And then, Darnold, that is going to be a huge question going into the offseason. I think what Minnesota is going to do, they're going to probably franchise him, bring him in at a number that they can handle. J.J. McCarthy, that was a bad knee injury, and they're just not sure if he's able to come back. But the way Darnold played in the playoffs, it's got to scare them.
So you bring him back, you tag him, franchise him, and see, you can't run. See, I think when these guys are coming off these types of injuries, there's too much pressure on them. Like Daniel Jones, the Giants are like, hey, come off a major injury and perform. I'm just using that as an example. McCarthy, same thing. Maybe the Vikings brass is like, okay, take your time. You're the franchise of the future, but we'll tag Darnold.
Yeah, and Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the GM, they believe in Darnold. I know he played terrible in that playoff game. They're probably going to bring him back, an act of goodwill, and they'll build around him. They have to clean up some pieces on the offensive line in particular. He was running for his life and defensively for the Vikings.
Ohio State, Notre Dame tonight, college football national championship in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, of course, in Atlanta, Georgia. OSU, Ohio State laying 9. I can't stand Notre Dame, so I'm probably going to lean towards Ohio State. Would you lay the 9 with Ohio State?
I would lay the 9 with the Ohio State. I think it's going to get ugly quick, and then a lot of times in college football, once it gets out of hand, teams just kind of pile it on, and it usually comes down to who has more 5-star athletes, and Ohio State does, particularly on the perimeter. And I'm just not sold on the Notre Dame quarterback as well. So being able to come back in terms of throwing the football. So I think Ohio State wins tonight, and I think they cover a number.
Vince chimes in sarcastically. The Giants signed Darnold 3 years, 120, and trade away the pick only and have a top 5 pick in 2026. I saw someone on X tweet out that the Lions were only a Matthew Stafford trade away from winning it all.
Yeah, it's tough when you see that. Goff, he looked like he was a guy, but he just shrunk in the moment. And unfortunately, that happens to quarterbacks sometimes in big games. They just kind of can't live up to regular season results.
I'm looking forward to seeing Washington because I got hammered prior to the season saying they were going to win, be a playoff team. And if you think about it, they've arrived early. Now, they arrived too early. Are we Are we prisoners of the moment? And no, please, see, this is the nonsense I got to deal with. Jimmy G, perfect bridge until Giants draft Arch.
Yeah, it's crazy, and yeah, we are prisoner moments in terms of Jade Daniels, but he is spectacular. He's not playing like a rookie.
Best rookie quarterback you've ever seen out of a quarterback?
And
best season?
Definitely, because most of them are usually right along, and you kind of, their second year, a lot of them popped, like Marino and Russell Wilson. Their second season, they played very well, but and Ben Roethlisberger, he was right wrong early on in his career. He handed the ball off to Bettis and they had a good defense, but Jaden Daniels is the guy, and as I was saying earlier, McLaurin, you have Eckler, and you just don't have a lot there. Their offensive line's kind of patchwork. They have a couple former Cowboys in an offensive line, and then at defense, as you said, they have Luvo and Wagner. Not much else on that defense. So overachieving group. It's a great story, and I'm interested to see how he's going to play in Philadelphia. It's going to be a big spot. The crowd's going to be crazy for the Eagles in that game.
Does Jaden Daniels have this type of season if Ron Rivera is the head coach and Eric Bieniemy is the offensive coordinator?
No, indeed, because that was just a misfit, and you had Ron Rivera, who was he was just trying to hold together, and let's not forget, it's the Snyder mess. It came from top down. Everything needed to be cleaned up, and that's what they did. They brought in Joshua Harris and that new ownership group, and they just changed everything from top to bottom. The general manager, the whole facility. So, and this kid is a cornerstone, and he's bought into the system, and his teammates love him, and he's a playmaker, man. He can run it, he can throw it, and he's smart. He's getting down. And Q, I watched him since he was at Arizona State. I just, I did not see this coming. Yeah, he was pretty good at LSU, but he held the ball too long there. And a lot of people talk about how skinny he was, but he is a playmaker, and he's playing very well for Washington right now.
Yeah, he's going to torment the NFC East for the next 10 years. So it's something that I'm not looking forward to. Of course, Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us extended on this Monday edition of The Drive, powered by our good friends over at Zen Auto Concepts, #1 detailing shop in the state of Florida. Check them out online, Stuart, Florida. And also, do not forget Play It Again Sports. Play It Again Sports, 2 locations, Deptford and Mount Laurel. All right, my friend, we have a lot of football to dissect later on in the week. You like Ohio State. I'll give my picks in a couple moments, but we got the AFC, NFC championships. We'll get into the betting aspect later in the week on BYP. We'll catch you tomorrow night, 8 to 9 with Lloyd Vance's Insider Football right here on Sports Radio 102.9 FM. The Game. Always appreciate you taking a couple moments out of a busy month. Did you get hit with snow by any chance?
Yeah. Me and my son were out shoveling earlier. It wasn't too bad. And, a couple inches.
I like how you said you and your son. I mean, it should really just be you having a cup of coffee and have your son.
Right.
That's how it should be.
I'll keep working on it.
All right, brother. We'll talk later in the week. Always appreciate a couple moments.
All right, bro. Talk to you later.
All right, you got it. Quick timeout. We'll come back.
Hey, Dad. Your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad. Your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey. Why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
All right, class. Let's hear what everyone did this weekend. Jill?
Well, I raised my older sister to a big oak tree. It was at least 100 years old. My mom said I must have set a record or something. And then we went down by a stream and perched up on this huge rock and saw all of these little minnows swimming around way below us. And then I rescued my little brother from an evil slug king who was guarding him at the bush fortress. And my sister and I brought him back to our super twig fort for safety. And then we all laid out and told stories until it got dark. And the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Awesome. Where were you, Jill?
Yeah. We went to the forest. It's not that far away. Anyone want to come this weekend?
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week and find the fun, adventurous you. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Don't forget to get social with us. Follow Q at RichQ on Q. And now, back to Q.
All right, 5:35 on a Monday edition of The Drive with Rich and Eunice here. We'll take up to 6 o'clock straight up. Good stuff from Lloyd Vance. Appreciate him. The extended time, and I really appreciate him giving some great insight as always. Man with the joke already. Feel bad for these guys at the strip club. Every time I go, I think to myself, man, I seen these same losers here every week. Breaking up the monotony as only he can, and I appreciate that. Tommy in Summers Point chimes in. Q, did you see the numbers that Saquon put up in 2 games against the Rams? Yes, it's remarkable. You know, here's the most impressive thing about Saquon Barkley this year, and I'd have to really dig through the numbers. But yeah, the 2 games against the Rams, he had 50-plus carries. He had close to 500 rushing yards. It's the yards after contact, and it's the big playability. 4 touchdowns, all over 60 yards. But again, you're also the benefit of being part of a great offensive line. His 300, 400 yards after contact, that's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. They needed him yesterday. Elliott came up big with a couple field goals after, again, missing those extra points. Defensively, they made some plays. The kid Zach Bond is a big-time player. Carter made some plays. Guys got into it, and this is what you want. They won the battle in the trenches, and they held up late. That's all you can ask for. I mean, it's pretty simple. We talked about it Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Just give it to number 26. Like, just ride his legs into the Super Bowl. You don't need Jalen. Anytime you have a running back like a Henry, like a Saquon, that's playing at such a high level, if you don't take advantage of it, it's malpractice. I mean, for Harbaugh to only give, or the offense to only get Henry incorporated in the ground attack, 16, 17 touches is absolutely malpractice. It really is. In a game where he started to crank it up, it just makes no sense. You're averaging 5.3 yards a carry. 5.3 yards a carry. So your best case scenario is 2nd and short, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. You can be so creative. You can play action if you want. You can dump off. You can drop off. You get him out of the flat. I mean, even the kid Hill was averaging 8.3 yards a carry, and they stopped running the football when they needed to. 176 on the ground. Did Buffalo do anything yesterday that blew you away? No, they didn't. Lamar had the pick, the fumble. Andrews had the fumble and the drop. There was really, and what happened too? Baltimore came right out of the gate, 7-0. And then Buffalo was able to answer. Then you had the pick. Then you had the punt. Then you had the fumble. Then you had the touchdown. It's 14-7. Baltimore comes right back 14-3, and then Buffalo answered the mark of a really good team. But even down by 11, you don't need to abandon the run. You don't. That series right after the half, coming out of the half, they didn't even try. They did not even try to run the ball more. They got 3, and I think they mixed it up a little bit. They converted a couple 3rd down. I'd have to go and look at a play chart. I think Henry had 1 run for 12 yards. Other than that, they got it down to the Baltimore 35, the Baltimore 29, or the Bills 29, and they had to settle for the field goal. And I believe they had the bad penalty that pushed them back to make it 3rd and 17. And then finally, you get that drive to cut it to 21-19, and you're feeling pretty good if you're a Ravens fan. But the mark of a good team in Buffalo has shown that resiliency. They've been very good at home, 8-0. They come back with a field goal. And then you had the fumble by Baltimore. It's just sometimes you got to establish the ground game a little more in these games. And you have to establish the ground game early and often. And when you have a back that's running for 2,000 yards and averaging 5.6 point yards a carry, feed him the ball, man. Even if you're only going to pick up minimal yardage, minimal gains, that's okay. Because if we've seen anything from Henry and Saquon, what can they do? They can break long runs. That drive that they got the field goal, let me see. They ran it. This was third quarter. They didn't run it one time. Everything was a pass. Short right. Andrews, Lamar, dump off. They ran it one time with Hill, -2 yards. That's it. That's it. I mean, you can't. That's unacceptable, and especially in those conditions. And Harbaugh is to blame. You know, Harbaugh does not get a free pass here. He doesn't. His track record in the playoffs is not the best over the last several years. So, like I said, we're going to get on these other coaches. You got to get on Harbaugh, man. You got arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, and you still can't figure it out. Yep, probably. Can we sit here and say the best 1-2 punch in the NFL? Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry? You can't get these guys in a friggin' AFC championship game? Come on. That's ridiculous. Rick and Deptford chimes in. Q, I am a Bears fan living in South Jersey. I hate to hire Ben Johnson. He's too erratic. What? What does that even mean? Why? What? Let me ask son. Ben Johnson wasn't throwing picks the other day. Aaron Glenn did not have the best game. Now, the one play I didn't like was obviously when they tried to get cute. That was absolutely, me and my buddy, that was just a stupid decision. But that's also, Dan Campbell green lights those plays. Dan Campbell green lights those plays. You're talking about a part of a game where at that point, the Lions have a pulse. The Lions have a pulse. You scored to make it 31-28. Washington comes right back, a little gut punch right to the liver, boom, 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 but you still have a pulse. And what do? On a 1st and 10 from your 46, you do a little trickery? Williams? I mean, that's horrible play call. Horrible play call. And then Washington comes right back and they score. It was a horrible play call. And listen, Campbell, he wants to be aggressive. That's his nature. And you're either going to die by being aggressive or you're going to live by being aggressive. And if you think about it, 4th down conversions, they were 2-2, but Washington was 3-4. And those were the more important ones. And they did the same thing against Tampa Bay. What did they do? 4th down, keep the ball in Jaden Daniels' hands, let him make a play, go ahead, touchdown. The defense allowed 481 yards. And conversely, Washington's defense gave up 500 yards. That's why I think Barkley's going to run wild. But I think it's going to be a shootout, contrary to what Lloyd believes. I think it's going to be a shootout. Look, you can't give up 45 points at home and turn the ball over 5 times and win. I don't care who you are. You're just not going to win the game like that. You're just not. In the history of the NFL, you're not giving up 45 points and turning the ball over 5 times and winning. You're not. And the 3rd down efficiency was horrible for the Lions. They were 3 of 9. Washington didn't fare any better. They were 4 and 12. But again, they made the plays when they needed to make the plays, and the quarterback didn't turn the ball over. It's a difference in these games. And Jaden Daniels hasn't been sacked. I think Jaden Daniels has only been sacked 1 time in 2 games in the playoffs. Washington's going to put up a very good fight against the Philadelphia Eagles. They are. That's going to be a hell of a game. And as far as the AFC championship game, I mean, just kind of an early sneak peek. If you're Buffalo, you know, there are going to be calls that don't go your way. You got to weather that early storm. You have to. You have to early that weather storm. Because when Kansas City needs to ratchet it up and Mahomes needs to make a play, listen, Kelsey looks like he's turning back the clock. I mean, Travis Kelsey was unguardable. They could not man him up. He had 7 targets. I think he had 7 or 8 targets, 7 catches for $117 and a touchdown. I mean, he looks spry. You don't want to get him cooking. They get the ground game. They got offensive weapons. We know they have slot receivers. They can move the football. It's going to be a really hard test for Buffalo, and you're going on the road. And we know the track record: Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Kelsey at home in the playoffs. Tough to win on the road. Very tough to win on the road. All right, yeah, the national championship game. I'm pretty much in alignment with Lloyd on this one. I can see Notre Dame, hanging around for maybe a quarter plus. Ohio State's they're just too good. They're stacked. They really are. And we talked about this earlier in the season with Notre Dame, like these teams defensively. What teams are going to win? That's what you're looking for. Which teams are going to win in the trenches? And Ohio State is they're a behemoth. They're big time. And I think they're going to dominate in the trenches this year, tonight. I do. I really do. And I think if you go back to the preseason, they've consistently amassed enough talent, and we're waiting. Okay, you're going to eventually break through, right? And I don't think a lot of people were saying that after the Michigan game, but here you go. They got a championship-worthy roster. And defensively, they have one of the best defenses. They have one of the best interior linemen, edge rushers in the country. I mean, this is a game Notre Dame has to. Notre Dame will have to score 24 or more points tonight, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it. Ohio State, deeper, more talented, and they take care of the football. They take care of the football, and you got a banged-up Notre Dame team. So if this game is a slugfest and it's a battle in the trenches, I think Ohio State has just enough firepower to score 7 as opposed to field goals. I can see this being a 24, 27, 14 type of game. 27, 13. I think Ohio State's going to cover the number. I don't foresee a 35, 13, but who knows? It could be 24 to 14 going into fourth, and Ohio State gets a pick, and all of a sudden you blink and it's 31 to 14 and they start to pour it on. I don't know. General rule in college football is what? The best team in the country typically emerges at the end. And that's what the expanded playoffs gave us. See, we want the best team, and we believe it's in Ohio State, and you atone for some earlier miscues throughout the season. It's very hard. You guys know this as well as I do. You trip up. You lose 2 games. You lose 1 game back in the day, you're out of it. They tripped up and lost 2 games. Notre Dame only lost 1. And you go back to the 2 losses. 1 was against Oregon. They couldn't make they just couldn't get the stops late. And the Michigan game was, a game that was in the trenches. And that was a Michigan type of game that was in the trenches. That was your Michigan game, right? In the trenches, you fall behind, you come back, you scrap it out, you kick a field goal late, you win it 13-10. That was a Michigan type of game. Offensively, Ohio State couldn't get their ground game going. They only had 77 yards in that game. Michigan ran for $172. You're not getting that tonight with Ohio State. Ohio State should be able to run the football a little bit tonight. But I just think they're deeper. I just think they're a deeper team. You go back and you look at Notre Dame and that game against Penn State, which to me was kind of the lesser of 2 evils because I can't stand either school. The kid from Penn State had just poor decision-making that game. Drew Lar, just poor decision-making. You can run on Notre Dame. Penn State was able to run. They were averaging close to 5.2 yards a carry. They ran for well over 200 yards. If Ohio State can run the football and open things up, their defense is going to be do the rest. They're definitely 9 points better. They are definitely 9 points better. I took a flyer on the Irish at the beginning of the playoffs. Wow. Plus 2,500. I'm the biggest ND fan ever tonight. You know what? Because of that, I hope you hit it. Plus 2,500 would be a friggin' fantastic pull. They need to get this game in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame has to get this game into the fourth quarter. They have to. This has to be a 17-14 type of game. The problem, Vince, is I don't see Notre Dame slowing Ohio State's offense down for 4 quarters. I just don't. Notre Dame's a banged up team. They're just a banged up team, man. I want to be wrong. I want you to hit. But for prosperity, I think this is a 24-13 type of Ohio State win. I really do. Joe chimes in. Q, I don't think we're going to get a classic. I tend to agree with you, but I think this game's actually going to come down to a couple field goals late. All right. Possibly. Russo chimes in from Delaware. Used to listen to me, $12.90 the ticket. Q, you mentioned Buckeyes offense and their defense is pretty good, but I think one of the differences right now, Notre Dame's going to have an opportunity for some big plays in this one. I don't see it. He says 27-17, Notre Dame. They're not. I just don't see it. I don't. Pete chimes in. Q, I love your take on this one. Remember one thing, Notre Dame knows how to drag it out and make it a street fight. I'm going to go with the upstate. Notre Dame 21, Ohio State 20. All right. For Vince's sake, I hope that's the case. That's a nice little pull, man. I went very light. Bills yesterday, and we did take the Rams and the points. I just like Ohio State tonight. I really do. I don't have too many plays on the hardwood because, let's be honest, all the games were early today. I think there's only one game later tonight or 2 games, Utah and the Bulls. So we'll save our hardwood picks for tomorrow. Jonathan Marshall is going to join us later in the week. Reese Wood down in Miami. We'll talk a little hoops with him. Also, Costco will join us from On 3 Sports. We'll recap tonight's college football championship. We'll get his thoughts on, the buzz surrounding some of these potential college coaches making the jump to the pros. I'll get you caught up to speed on some NBA finals. Knicks over the Hawks, 119-110. Grizzlies over the T-Wolves, 108-106. Pistons won again. They are a game over 500. How about the Rockets, even though they lost, 107-96? Rockets have played well this year. Mavericks wound up losing that game. Hornets beat them 110-105. Boston and the Warriors right now. Boston's up 33-22. Cavs all over the Suns late in that one, 118-92. Cavaliers are friggin' legit. They're 20-2 at home. And then you got the 2 other games, Jazz and the Pelicans, the Bulls and the Clippers. And you got college football championship tonight, Ohio State and Notre Dame. I'll get a couple more of your picks in here before we get out of here. Dan in Delmarva chimes in. Q, Ohio State is my squad. I believe they're going to win tonight relatively easily. I think offensively they should be able to run the ball. As you mentioned, Notre Dame's a banged up team. I just love the pedigree of Ohio State. Coming back, being in this position after losing 2 games is pretty remarkable. Give me Ohio State 27, Notre Dame 6. Ooh. All right. You guys got it. All right. As we start to wrap it up, good stuff from Lloyd Vance jumping on board today. Always appreciate his insight. If you guys want to give me your thoughts before we get out of here, 727-858-6650. We'll take our last time out. We'll clean it up. We'll come back on the other side. And then, as I mentioned, Jay's coming up at 6 with his show, but we will take our last time out and then we'll wrap things up on a Monday edition of The Drive with Q.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, Your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
All right, class. Let's hear what everyone did this weekend. Jill?
Well, I raised my older sister to a big oak tree. It was at least 100 years old. My mom said I must have set a record or something. And then we went down by a stream and perched up on this huge rock and saw all of these little minnows swimming around way below us. And then I rescued my little brother from an evil slug king who was guarding him at the bush fortress. And my sister and I brought him back to our super twig fort for safety. And then we all laid out and told stories until it got dark. And the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Awesome. Where were you, Jill?
Yeah. We went to the forest. It's not that far away. Anyone want to come this weekend?
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week and find the fun, adventurous you. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Download the Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game app and tell your friends that Florida has a new leader in digital sports radio.
A couple minutes to play with before we get out of here. 727-858-650. Appreciate everyone checking us out on the YouTube channel, Rich Quinones, and also SR 1029, The Game as well. So you got national championship. We'll do a little NBA later on in the week, and obviously we will focus on the AFC and the NFC championship games respectively. I gave you the numbers for those games. I didn't really see anything that jumped out with these lines. Eagles laying 5.5, 6. Kansas City laying 2. I think you're going to see a lot of money. I think the recency bias, you might see some money on the Commanders. I would not be shocked at that line. You know, who knows? Maybe that line gets bumped up to 6, 6.5. I would grab it. I do like Washington to keep this game relatively close. Just kind of a sneak peek. Kansas City and Buffalo, throw a dart, man. Throw a dart. Your guess is as good as mine. We just want a clean game. That's it. That's all we're hoping for. A clean game for both the AFC and the NFC championships, respectively. As far as Jalen Hurts, I know a couple of you guys were buzzing me in on that. I don't see anything. I know they were kind of coy. Mitchell, Hurts apparently didn't suffer major injuries. Obviously, I know people on Twitter, everyone's the expert saying that it looks like knee ligament PCL sprain for Jalen Hurts. Again, he's going to be out there. He is going to be out there, and he's a tough kid, man. He's going to be out there, and he's going to ball, and he's going to play. And that's all you can ask for. That's all you can ask for. He's a gamer, and that's what you want in a quarterback. All right, got to start wrapping up. Good stuff from Lloyd Vance. Appreciate him from jumping on board. Don't forget, you will catch him tomorrow, 8 to 9, with Lloyd Vance's Insider Football right here on SR 102.9 FM The Game. Pete Shepard, get you started in the morning, 7 to 10. Martinez and company back in the saddle on Wednesday and Friday. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow, 4 to 6, and obviously Monday to Friday the rest of the week. Also, don't forget, we've got the Marshall Time podcast. New episode. Jonathan Marshall and his brother do a great job. So you got Pete Shepard Show, Martinez and Company, my show. You got Bees World coming up, talking hoops. Young Life Radio later on in the week. A couple of new shows coming from our good friends over at Critical Sports Agency, Critical Sports Entertainment and Sports. So with that being said, enjoy the national championship game. For Vince's sake, I hope Notre Dame wins, even though I can't stand Notre Dame. But if it puts a little coin in his pocket, God bless you on that. I still think Ohio State wins it by at least 13 tonight. We will do it again tomorrow. Back in the saddle. Everyone have a good Sports Monday. As we always like to say, be safe, be sound, Give yourself a little more time to get to where you need to go. Download the SR1029 FM app. Give us a follow on social media at RichQ on Q. And we'll talk to you tomorrow from 4 with another edition of The Drive. Hasta luego, mon dia.